Kiha Kolomosi, Ninja Shinzi Kikai Man, Nunjiai, Lamawo, Tekwa Wak, Lamawo, Lunapawak, Anishi Kishalo Moquang, Alamili and Yonkwai Kishquik, Wak Kukana Aki, Wak Tenda, Wak Umbi, Wakilongo Matit, Wak Nimbu Mouse Wakanum, Anishik, 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 Anishik. Hello, everybody. My name is Chief Mann. I'm the Turtle Clan Chief of the Ramapo Munsee people. And thank you, Creator, for giving us this day, our Mother Earth. We thank you for the fire and the water and the trees. We thank you for all of our relations. And most importantly, we thank you for our lives. Thank you, thank you, thank you, and thank you.
Thank you so much, Chief Mann, for that wonderful blessing. If everyone would like to see whose land they're on at the moment, I've just put a website in the chat where you can click on that and put in your home address and find out the Native Americans whose land you're on. Chief Mann, thank you very much, and welcome everybody to our Green New Deal and Accelerator Workshop. My name is Neil Marr. I'm a professor of history in the Federated History Department at Rutgers in Newark and the New Jersey Institute of Technology, where I study and teach environmental justice history. And I'll be your moderator this afternoon, and I'm happy to say that I've met most of you already, so it's wonderful to see you here, and thank you for coming. The first thing I'd like to do is have everyone turn on their cameras, if you can. And if you haven't already, if you can go in and under your name, put your affiliation. So the way you do that is you go to your square, you see that little blue box in the upper right corner with the 3 dots, you click on that. When it opens up, oh, it's not opening up. I have to do mine. It'll open up and you'll see rename at the bottom. If you just click on that rename, then you'll be able to put a parenthesis and just put your community or your organization, whatever you feel comfortable doing. That way, we all know who we're speaking to and we can identify everyone. So thank you for doing that. Before we begin, a few announcements. Please note that this meeting is being recorded. By participating, you're providing Rutgers University permission to record your image and or voice. And you grant Rutgers all rights to these recordings in any medium for educational, promotional, advertising, or other purposes that support the mission of the university. Please also remember to use your raise your hand feature if you want to comment. At the bottom of your screen, the bottom of the big gallery, you will see a reactions button. If you click on that reactions button, you can go to the raise hand feature and raise your hand, okay? For now, if you can go up to the upper right-hand corner and click on view and switch to the gallery view, then you get to see everybody at the same time in one big screen. If you'd prefer to see the speaker highlighted in a very, very large square, you can click back to that speaker view and do it that way. A quick reminder to our guides, Scott and Tamira, in the breakout rooms, we'll be adding a 5-minute and 1-minute warning when those sessions are ending for you to switch over. So we'll be reminding you there, okay? And lastly, I want to thank our collaborators on organizing this project. Of course, the Price Institute on Ethnicity, Culture, and the Modern Experience at Rutgers Newark, which has spearheaded all of our Green New Deal events, and especially Jack Chen, who's the director there. We also want to thank NJ Thrive, especially Jody Stewart and Amanda Devicker-Reiner for working with us over the past several months, which has been fantastic, and also the Ramapo Culture and Land Foundation, especially Chief Mann. So now just a few intro remarks. I'm a historian and I've written a lot about the Great Depression and the New Deal from the 1930s. And what I've learned is that the original New Deal was very much a top-down initiative. It was directed by politicians like Franklin Roosevelt and administrators in Washington, D.C. And as a result, local communities were often left out. They were left out of the planning process, they were left out of the implementation process, and they were especially left out of the funding. So today's Accelerator Workshop is an attempt to correct that top-down approach. We've held 2 sessions in the past, one for communities from northern New Jersey and a second from communities in southern New Jersey. And today's workshop builds on those earlier sessions by helping all of you, these communities, begin the process of developing fundable local projects. The goal is to make sure you all have a voice in any Green New Deal legislative initiatives that are coming down the pike. We want to avoid what happened during the 1930s and make sure that you all are involved in this process from beginning to end. The afternoon's format, we're going to have 3 sessions, as I've explained in a couple of emails. First, we're going to hear from a couple of community organizers who have developed projects. They have well-developed projects. They're going to serve as examples for some of us. They're going to describe their projects, and then there'll be a brief discussion between them and myself about the process that they underwent to get to this stage where they're ready to seek funding. And then we'll have a Q&A at the end of that in case any of you have questions. In the second session, you'll all be divided up into 2 breakout workshops. Each workshop will have a faculty member there who is there to listen and provide any support that they can. And more importantly, an experienced guide, someone who has experience in developing projects into fundable programs. And you'll be in those breakout sessions for about an hour. And the 2 guides actually will switch. So you'll get feedback from both guides. And that's where you all can present your needs and your ideas for what's going on in your community and begin to work on formulating a project to begin that process. In our third session, we'll all reconvene together. We will begin with a brief update on the current state of Green New Deal legislation, both on the federal level and within the state of New Jersey, just to give us sort of a contemporary snapshot of what's going on now. And then we're going to have a grand sort of idea exchange with the 2 guides who are experienced moderating a discussion between you all and among you all about next steps that we think need to be taken as a collaborative group or individually to help this process continue beyond just the beginning stage, but also to try to help see them through to the funding stage. So let's begin with session 1. If everyone could now turn off your cameras, and if you want to switch to speaker view, you'll just see 3 people. You'll see the 2 presenters and myself. And what we're going to do is we're going to hear from 2 community organizers who have well-developed projects. They're each going to give a 5 to 7 minute presentation about their projects, and then we'll follow that by a discussion that I will moderate with these 2 community organizers about how they got to this stage. So I'd like to introduce the 2 community organizers now. Our first presenter is Tobias Fox. He's the founder and managing director of Newark Science and Sustainability, which is a community-driven nonprofit in Newark that raises awareness of environmental, ecological, and wellness issues through educational programs and hands-on activities. Today, Tobias will discuss a few programs he's developed for Newark Science and Sustainability, and he's coming to us from the Dominican Republic. So thank you so much for being here, Tobias.
You're very welcome. And thank you for allowing me to share this platform with you. And I'm just going to jump right into it. I know it's a packed full day of discussion and collaboration. And I'm going to start sharing my screen, if that's all right. Okay. All right, so just a wrong image, but the right presentation. So I'm just going to say that within the United States, the Environmental Protection Agency estimates that more food reaches landfills and incinerators than any other single material in our everyday trash. By keeping wholesome and nutritious food in our communities and out of our landfills, we can help address the 42 million Americans that live in food insecure households. This would also have a tremendous impact on our climate. Roughly 44.2% of New Jersey's urban children, that's ages 3 to 18, are overweight or obese. Causes include poor nutrition education coupled with food deserts. Now, these are areas that lack access to fresh, healthy food, a predominant issue in minority and low-income neighborhoods. So through urban agriculture, which lays the foundation of my work, which is North Science and Sustainability, or North Stats, as some of us call it. Since 2012, with little to no financial resources, we've managed to make an impact in our community by implementing various initiatives to increase awareness of environmental, ecological, and wellness issues through educational programs and hands-on activities such as creating community gardens and urban farms. This involves healthy food access, also ecological or green construction, advocating for strong policy that protects the long-term sustainability of our green spaces and the creation of a green economy. We achieve this through collaboration and partnerships with residents, community-based organizations, and other key stakeholders, including local businesses. And so this image we see here, this was a vacant lot in the city of Newark that we adopted in 2015. I, along with nearly 50 others, operate within Newark's Adopt a Lot program, where residents are invited to transform unused city-owned lots into gardens by leasing the site for $1. And so I was in search for a lot. My colleague, Jacqueline Beto, sent me here to this location. This isn't the only vacant lot in this particular neighborhood. This area is also littered with crime, poverty, and neglect. As I stood in this space, making my observation on how to transform this environment into a garden, my initial thoughts were to just leave. But as I was standing there and preparing to act out on my thoughts, I noticed a group of children walking out of the building adjacent to this space. You see, it turns out that this facility that you see is a childhood learning center, and that at the time they didn't have a playground. And so the instructors would line up the children and then walk them around the block as a means to give them some outdoor activity. And that's when I said to myself, okay, we can do better than this. So I began to see this space from a different lens. Just like without the proper nurturing, we limit a plant's growth. Well, without the proper environment, we limit a child's growth. We limit our own growth. In order to get the most out of anything, we have to put the best of us into its creation. And so we transformed this space into the Garden of Hope. It is our belief that gardens in and of themselves are the real life symbols of hope. Our gardens invigorate people's senses during the day-to-day hustle and bustle. We've been able to transform abandonment into sustainability. The gardens become a gathering place where strangers become friends and to ponder their thoughts amongst the beauty of the garden. We have brought about a true sense of community through the natural unifier of food. And through our farm-to-table co-op, we ensure that the food we grow reaches the tables of the people in the community. Now, seeing what we could accomplish with the Garden of Hope, we decided to take it a step further by implementing all the aspects of organizational gardening to creating the City of Newark's first year-round sustainable urban farm, which will consist of a hydroponic greenhouse that'll collect rainwater for year-round food production, an outdoor commercial kitchen to support our nutrition and culinary initiatives. We'll also have a walk-in cooler where we can store the produce we harvest. There'll also be a weekly farm stand, a few chickens, some solar technology to help offset some of our energy expenses, and an enclosed facility with a restroom where we can not only host meetings, but also display and sell some of our value-added products. We've transformed a vacant lot into a community garden that soon will become an agricultural hub to support the 30 local growers within our network and ecopreneurs by developing new products for various markets. We started this journey in 2015, and it hasn't been easy, but we created a plan with actionable steps and moved with purpose. And to that end and new beginning, I say think global, act local, and that's global. Thank you for this opportunity.
Thank you, Tobias. That was awesome.
Yeah.
I had heard about your work, but had not heard it as detailed as you just explained. It's just absolutely fantastic. And I'm really looking forward to asking you some follow-up questions about your proposed project, which just looks amazing. Before we do that, we're going to shift to Chief Mann, and then we'll come back to Tobias and Chief Mann. Our next presenter is Chief Vincent Mann. He is the leader of the Ramapo Lenape Nation, whose tribal lands are located along the northern New Jersey border with New York State. Chief Mann has been working for years on the cleanup of the Ringwood Mine Superfund site within his community, and he'll discuss today, I think, 2 new projects that he's developed for Green New Deal funding, and I believe he's gotten some funding already for these projects. So he's going to explain those to us. Thank you, Chief Mann, and really appreciate your coming today.
Yeah, thank you. And I believe somebody else has access to some graphics, Claudia, maybe. And just to clarify, I'm actually the Turtle Clan chief of the Ramapo Lenape Nation. Okay. Our strategy and our programs, obviously me, I'm the Turtle Clan chief of the Ramapo Lenape Nation, as well as the director of the Ramapo Culture and Land Foundation, and the co-founder of Muncie Three Sisters Medicinal Farm. As you can see, there is a lot on this screen, but Michaeline and I created the Ramapo Culture and Land Foundation to be the catalyst for revitalizing our culture, for saving our land. So in the land part of Ramapo Culture and Land Foundation, we have been working for the last several years on inventorying and mapping our ceremonial stone landscapes, which are strewn throughout the state of New Jersey, as well as Southern New York and Connecticut. We're currently working with the Nature Conservancy and other landholding nonprofits to reacquire our ancestral lands for preservation and to be the stewards of those. On the cultural end of things, cultural preservation, we are working on revitalizing our language, which has been something we've been working on for many years, as well as with Ramapo College, providing us a space in order to do that. We're looking to expand that to Rutgers as well as Montclair State University. Ceremonial activities is also important for land acquisition for us, so that we have the ability to forage for wild edibles or wild medicinals, to be able to hunt and fish clean game and fish, due to the fact of the poisoning of the lands that we live on in Ringwood, New Jersey. People, health and wellness, the healing of our community in Ringwood, and to make our community sustainable again, for such a loss of life and the impacts of living in an environmental justice community. Through the foundation, we address food sovereignty, and that relates to Muncie Three Sisters Medicinal Farm, which is a for-profit farm, which Michaeline and I created on 14 acres of land, where we have 5 miles of vegetable beds that we intentionally grow vegetables that are higher in medicinal value. And then beginning this year, we will begin to distribute food to our community every 2 weeks. And our other The other part of that is that we're going to be able to produce enough food that we can go into other communities such as Newark, Passaic, Patterson, Newton, Andover, and others to offer these vegetables to them as well. We'll be partnering with other nonprofits so that we can have them do the distribution of those foods. We also created on our farm is a hemp farm. We currently are growing hemp in our greenhouse, which we plan on growing year round. We plan on also offering microgreens. And all of this is to address the ongoing environmental injustice that has been taking place in our community. Next slide. This is our key projects that we have underway. Muncie Three Sisters Medicinal Farm, which I just spoke about. Ceremonial stone landscapes. Next one. Challenges are real. We're not a federally acknowledged tribe. We are a state acknowledged tribe. We are, the federal government did acknowledge that we are Native people and that's never been a question, although the federal acknowledgement does elude us. This provides us with many challenges in regards to living in a federal Superfund site, to housing, to education and health. Many of our people live in our core area, and which is a federal Superfund site. They live in a land that no one should live in. And we're in the process of creating a type of pilot program where the Muncie Three Sisters Medicinal Farm, as well as the rebuilding of a completely green community with a smaller carbon footprint than exists now. We've launched our programs, on our own without help from the outside. But what we have done since then, as Rutgers Newark, the Price Institute, has really stepped up and offered their support and has helped us to attain certain levels of acknowledgements and funding, which has been, extremely helpful. We still need to build our organizational capacity. We still need to build our capacity of our farm, which we currently are exploring to do. We are building on growing on 14 acres. Looks like we're going to have another 40 acres, which is land that is held by the Nature Conservancy to farm next year. And we're working also with NOFA to be able to take land that has been farmed conventionally and to convert that state land into quote unquote organic farming on that land. And we're also still in talks with the state of New Jersey in regards to 103 acres of farmland in Vernon, New Jersey. Next one. Our partnerships assets are strong. Again, NOFA helping us to identify ways to blend traditional knowledge and market development opportunities. One of those things that we have there is that we as the Indigenous people look at the word organic, and the word organic, really what defines that is a co-opting of Indigenous ways. And so we are actually making an effort to create a separate category nationally for Native American grown. colleges and universities, helping us to create the evidence needed to gain acknowledgement, but also helping us to establish the truth and facts of our existence here. The universities that we currently are working with is University of Pennsylvania, Ramapo College, NYU Environmental, NJIT, Rutgers Newark, Rutgers New Brunswick, Montclair State University. The goal here is to tie all of those things into a formidable presence, not just that here we are working by ourselves and floundering. With these universities supporting us, two things happen. One is that we gain the capacity and the knowledge of those who help us, but in return, we are also offering a very unique Native American view that we then share with the students. And we have held classes with students from universities, and that is crossing, building bridges and crossing them, right? It's not enough just to build those bridges, you have to actually walk across them together. We have created several documentaries. The Way of the Ramapo is one of them. You can see that on YouTube. The Meaning of the Seed is also on YouTube. National organizations, Justice 40, the Nature Conservancy, and some others are helping us to build the capacity needed to qualify for direct assistance. As you might be aware, we have had the first part of Build Back Better move forward and signed, and I believe today the House also passed that next part of that. So these organizations, such as the Justice 40 Accelerator, we were one of, I believe, 53 cohorts who were awarded assistance to help us to begin building that organizational body for us, so that we can have direct access to these grants, where we can get the direct help coming into our community through the Justice 40. So that's what we have right now. There is a lot more that is not there right now. We have a very large intention of who we are. We are going to be creating an environmental business, which will be Native American owned, where we can then be the ones on the forefront of dealing with these 18,000 brownfields in the state of New Jersey, but also taking our model of this totally green, minimal carbon footprint community, the farming with Muncie Three Sisters Medicinal Farm and cultural restoration, and be able to take that and put that into a package where we can then take that from here and bring that anywhere to other Indigenous communities, to other communities who are not Indigenous but find themselves in the same situation. Going in and revitalizing some of these local towns in the state of New Jersey, in Paterson and Newark and Passaic, and helping to create, to bring back that sense of community that has been lost. And in our opinion, this is why we have ended up where we are today. Even going back to the 1930s, it was that what was forced upon Indigenous people to be individuals, me, I, mine, And we have to get back to we and ours and sharing. So thank you for this opportunity to be here, and look forward to the rest of the day. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Chief Mann. An equally powerful presentation that gives us a lot to talk about. So I'd like to invite Tobias back on as well. And what we'll do now is for about 20 minutes, we'll have some questions for, I'll have some questions for Tobias and Chief Mann. We'll have a discussion and then we'll open it up to some questions from the other participants, okay? So I was just really taken in both of your presentations by the process from a need in your communities to the kernel of an idea for a project, and then how you develop that into, you know, full-blown projects that are now getting funding, and we see the fruits of that in those images. I'm wondering if you could talk about the steps that you had to undertake from idea, from need to idea to project, and also if during that process things shifted a bit, and how those changes, how did you deal with those changes, and how did it make the projects evolve in maybe ways you hadn't anticipated? So I guess it's two questions: the process and then any changes that occurred during it. And I don't know who wants to start. Tobias, you want to jump in first, and then we'll go to Chief Mann. Is that okay?
Okay, sure. So first, I should say that my educational background has nothing to do with agriculture. I was born in North, grew up in East Orange. I grew up in a household of 16, and we experienced every issue related to poverty. Food insecurity was at the top of the list. But my educational really consists of creative writing, filmmaking, book publishing. I'm also a photographer. And it wasn't until 2012 when I I got turned on to this whole concept of sustainability, and really from sustainability from the perspective of agriculture and the use of renewable energy, along with eco art. And so I learned about the city of Newark having a adopt a lot program where you can adopt a vacant lot for the purpose of turning it into a green space. And so I was just kind of, you know, amazed with that idea, with that concept, and I got involved in it, and didn't realize how labor intensive gardening is, let alone farming. And so, and then I didn't know all that went into it until I started getting my hands into it. And then I said, okay, well, water access is a challenge, community engagement is a challenge, just getting, you know, basic resources like soil is a challenge. And I said, well, my God, I can't be the only one having these challenges, because there's other people involved in this program that they have in North. And so I just started asking questions to others, like, you know, what are you doing for water? What are you doing for soil and other resources? And it turned out that we were all having shared grievances, but we were all operating, or most of us was operating in our own silo. And so that allowed me to put on this organizing hat to say, well, let's start collaborating with each other, hosting workshops and events, getting people to start talking about how we can work in collaboration with one another. And so as I'm developing this kind of network through organizing and using grassroots organizing as an approach to connect more with people within the same network. And then learning how to become a gardener and then a farmer, I started saying, well, how can we create something that can really demonstrate the interconnectedness and harmonious relationship between nature, people, and community? And so as a writer, I'm thinking about these things and writing it out. And so then I start connecting more with artists, people within my network who are landscape designers, visual artists, and asking them if they could help me visualize my wording. I want people to process what I'm trying to create from their perspective, and I know most of us are visual learners. And so I had people just working with me to kind of attach images, and so that's why I love when people ask me to talk, I don't define myself as a public speaker. I like to match my narrative with visuals. And so that's how I kind of started pulling all this together. It was kind of like this 5 to 7 year progression of, one step led me to the next step. And then in 2017, something very interesting happened. I was presented with an opportunity. And so I tell people I define success as when persistence meets opportunity. And so this gentleman, someone introduced me to a gentleman who wanted to start a hydroponic farm in Newark. He had access to greenhouses and he wanted to put them in Newark. And so I spoke with the guy. We kind of hit it off in our initial meeting. And so I went off and wrote a proposal for a hydroponic greenhouse. But then after the proposal was written, he liked he liked the whole concept, but we couldn't kind of come together on the same terms, and it just fell apart. But then in 2018, I get an email from someone from Richie Outlaw, who recently retired from the New Jersey's Department of Environmental Protection Agency's Environmental Justice Department. And she says, hey, Tobias, a former colleague of mine is representing a corporation who was heavily fined for illegal dumping. And they decided to opt into a program that allows them to reduce their penalty if they agree to fund a community project. Do you have a project in mind that you think could be funded? And here I am with this hydroponic farm proposal that didn't go nowhere the year before. And now this opportunity arises. And so I said, sure, yeah, I do have a proposal and the community project in mind. And so that gave new life, new birth to what I had started in 2017. But the challenges has always been how to protect the long-term sustainability of a green space when there is no policy in place to do so. And so I come to the conclusion that land ownership must be the next best way to do that. And so by having this opportunity that presented itself in 2018, allowed me to transition myself from leaseholder to land ownership. And I hope in somewhere in that story, I answered at least one of your questions.
Absolutely. What was so amazing is that what you saw at one point as a bump in the road or even a stop sign, right, when that project fell apart, becomes a new avenue to something, similar and wonderful, right? So it's just great that how those things work out. And Chief Mann, maybe you'd like to share a similar discussion about the process that you took and your people have taken. I know it's been a long journey about how it went from a need and an idea to these incredible projects that you outlined as well.
So one of the things that as a leader that I discovered was that, any real leader of anything has to put their people before them. And that means that the sacrifice that one makes is truly up above and beyond that of anyone else, right? And so Michaeline and I began this journey of trying to figure out how do we heal our people. We've run against so many roadblocks over the years with trying to get our community relocated, to trying to get, the taxes removed, from the houses that are there that have no value, yet their, mortgage is $200,000, $300,000, right? To how do we begin to heal them internally, as well as begin to eventually provide good quality, high paying jobs to our community who really needs to be in nature, right? So one of the things that we have done was that for 6 years, I actually had every authoritative figure, official, lawyers, myself, um, reach out to Riche Outlaw, right? And she refused to come to any CAG meeting. She refused to come to Ringwood, New Jersey. Now, her position that she held was only because of two communities in the beginning, prior to her having that position, was Garfield and Ringwood, New Jersey Superfund sites.
You want to just explain who she is, Chief Mann, for everybody?
Riche Outlaw is the former environmental justice coordinator for the state of New Jersey. And, one day I had bumped into her at a convening, and she came up to me and introduced herself. And I explained to her that I knew who she was. And she wanted to explain to me that the reason why she didn't come to Ringwood is because she didn't want to get in the way of whatever it was that I was doing. And yet, the environmental justice program for the state of New Jersey was started here because of our community, right? The federal government gave the state of New Jersey $1 million, right? And so I find it kind of ironic where, Riche Outlaw reached out, to Tobias. I'm glad that she did, right? Because somebody needs to have that, right? But here we have a community that is literally living and dying and being born into a Superfund site, right? Where their health disparities are off the chart, and that DNA switches have been switched on in their body, so now it's being passed from generation to generation. So it's a perfect example of what we as Indigenous people fight against, right, in this country, still to this day, still in this state who are even responsible for what our community is suffering, right? Because they gave a permit to do the dumping to the Ford Motor Corporation on our community, right? And so with all of that, right? So the Riche Outlaw thing, the EPA, the whole DEP, and everybody else, Michaeline and I said, you know what, we have to stand up and save our community. We're tired. Michaeline and I buried over 80 of our people in 3 years. So when you go through that, the traumatic experience of the loss of life, right, loss of family, is so traumatic that at a certain point, you become almost numb to it. You kind of just go through life with no purpose. And so we began to actively seek out, how can we help our community begin to heal from the inside out? And we realized that we could do that through food, right? And who would bear the burden? Who would bear the burden of cost? Who would bear the burden of physical labor, right? Who would be up all night thinking about how they're going to pay for this? We took that on because that was our responsibility. And so we literally took, our first mortgage payment, and we leased 9 acres of land. And then the worst thing of worst could happen is that COVID came, right? And so for that first year with the leasing of this farm, we just grew on a 1/4 acre lot, just so our ancestors would know that we were back here on this soil and tending to it, right? And then what we did in the meantime for that year is we delivered over 100,000 pounds of food to our community so that we can keep them at home as much as possible because they're already health compromised. We were pretty successful in doing that. We unfortunately did lose 1 or 2 of our people. And then what we began to do this year is that we started to grow 6 acres of hemp. We grew, laid out 5 miles of vegetables and a high pressure growing. We didn't have the tools necessary to accomplish our goals completely, but going through that process and suffering through dumping our money into a hole, it was the belief in ourselves and belief in what we were doing that we knew that no matter what, we were never going to give up. Right? That determination to be able to save a people's lives. And so, we went and we bought a truck. We went and we bought a tractor, right? $50,000 tractor, all which have payments, right? We had community support groups like DSA New Jersey, right? Four Directions Mutual Aid, who stepped in and did fundraisers for us so that we could purchase our first greenhouse, right? And then we had the Seven Generations Fund step in and donated us half the money for the larger greenhouse, right? And we began that process, and that's how it came about, way beyond the beginning of necessity, right? I mean, this is like dire need. This is something where the state or county or federal government should have been coming in here, stepping in and making these things happen, right? We do that in third world countries, right? But we don't do that here when we still have the exact same things happening. And so along the way, you know, we met, you know, people like yourself and Dr. Jack Chen and you know, my awesome, you know, friend Scott Bernstein, and they began to believe in us and our vision, right? So it's not just about having a farm. It's not just about having a farm and feeding the people. It's about having a farm, feeding the people, healing the people, creating enough resources that we could actually then open up a Native American food store, right? And that other people can begin to eat healthy and live their lives in a good way, all while still, right, donating, you know, our vegetables to community outlets for people to have food for free. And so, you know, our farm has become a hub of underprivileged, underserved, environmental justice communities. I mean, we have, you know, Anthony's on here, you know, we have folks that come from Newark and they drive up, and some come up at the end of the day and they work until 2 or 3, 4 in the morning, right? And then they either stay over in our camper or they go home. That's because they believe in what we're doing. That's because they come there and they begin to feel that sense of community, which in turn empowers them. It doesn't matter where they live. It doesn't matter, you know, one of them is a social worker, right? Going for his master's, right? But he finds the time to remain a human being. And so, you know, what we're doing there is, it is focused on our people, but our people is everybody. Ilongo Matit means all of our relations. And so that's what we are expanding to.
What I love so much about your story, and also it was mentioned in Tobias's story also, is that, you know, you both began sort of individually, right? Or as a couple, in your case, Chief Mann, up with your partner. And yet through the hard work, after a while, other people began to join you in this effort. And by the end, you were talking about your whole community and your site becoming a hub for your community. It just becomes this thing that's so much bigger. And Tobias, you mentioned similarly how you networked with other organizations in Newark, and then how the children in the school became part of it. And it just sort of grew to become something much bigger than just you, which I think is just such a wonderful process going on. We have 4 minutes left until we have a Q&A, and I'm wondering if we could, I could ask one question and just have you both respond really, really briefly, maybe one sentence or one thought. If you could give one single piece of advice to the people who are listening now about how to take a need or an idea and turn it into a project, just really briefly, what advice would you give them? And then we'll go to a Q&A.
Well, I would definitely say not everyone will buy into your idea. When I first started out in 2012, they told me I was too young of an organization, just started out, no one knew me. I was constantly, and still am, overlooked by a lot of the major funders. And so my thing is that if you are very passionate about what you want to do and you really believe in your idea, then there's nothing or no one can hold you back from that. I don't care how small scale you're able to make some accomplishments. Celebrate as if it's the biggest thing in the world. Celebrate every step of the way, and you make that celebration big, and you use social media to let people know that you exist.
Thank you, Tobias.
You know, my word of advice is to Remember your humility. And just like with the Green New Deal that we have here in New Jersey, right? We have people from different communities and organizations that came together to form a larger community. And rebuilding, you have to have a community behind you, right? You have to have that sense of community. In my case, it's a little bit different, right? Because you know, I'm the Turtle Clan chief, you know, but beyond that, I'm a hereditary chief. And so the inherent responsibility that I have, I would like to think that everybody else has that same inherent responsibility to humanity, right? And so I guess my word of advice would be that stay true to who you are, stay focused, keep your humility, even though Chief Mann sometimes loses his. But it's okay. It's usually on officials, and continue to move forward. To, you know, like Tobias said, you know, we use social media and all those different outlets now, so that if there are people out there who do need help, I mean, anybody can come to us. I mean, we don't have much, you know, but you know, anybody is welcome to come stay at our house, stay at our farm. We even encourage people to come to our farm, right? You know, somebody once asked me, Chief Mann, how do you get all these people to come to be a part of what you do? Right. And I told them food. Right. Because when I was a young kid, right, at 27 Haskell Ave in Haskell, New Jersey, that's where my grandma and my grandpa lived. And my grandma and grandpa had a garden there. And several of the other elders along the street had gardens as well. And from one end to the other end of that street, which was about 3/4 of a mile long, it was a sense of community. Everybody knew who the next person was. Today, what we are missing is that, you know, we don't have that sense of community. None of the 300 million plus Americans who live in this country. You know, it's all about I and me, right? And I said it before, the only way to save humanity, right, is to look at the natural world, right? Look at the animal kingdom, all those mammals, and what do? Right? They take care of each other, they love each other, right? They give each other space, they share, and they care for each other. And that really is how to be successful. My advice would be to maintain that sense of community and remember to always put those people who you're working for in front of yourself.
Thank you. Thank you so much, both you, Chief Mann, and also Tobias, for those. It's just really wonderful, and just really feeds, I think, what we're doing here for the rest of the afternoon. So I want to just open it up now to our community here and community members from across New Jersey. If you all go up to your view and turn it to gallery and turn on your cameras, you can all join us and really open it up to you all to ask Chief Mann and Tobias any questions you have for them. We have about 15 minutes, so please feel free to jump in. You can just unmute yourself and ask, or you can, I see a couple of hands here. Elliot, do you want to go first? I see your hand raised.
Sure, thank you, Neil. Chief Mann, I've been following the struggle of the Ramapo Lenape for quite some time. And I've noticed that you as chief of the Turtle Clan really expanded the recognition of your struggle and accelerated the success of some of your projects once you've reached out to some of the environmentally and conservation related nonprofits in the state, such as the Nature Conservancy and NOFA and the Food Shed Alliance and the Highlands Coalition and Musconetcong Watershed Association. Can you comment on that? Was that something intentional? because I think it's made a huge difference.
So during the Black Lives Matter movement, right, out of that came BIPOC, right? And BIPOC is Black and Indigenous people of color. So one of the relationships to our natural world is that here are these nature conservancies and nature organizations who actually might get funding, but didn't know what to do, right? I mean, they literally were sitting there like, right? And so having had the relationship of the environmental injustice, right, prior to that, what came to be out of that was that, hey, you know, we have this thing and we got together and we had a presentation and other organizations were on there. And then next thing you know, through the words that were spoken, you know, they began to reach out and say, oh, Chief Mann, we want to be a part of this. Oh, Chief Mann, we want to be a part of that. And so that relationship that has been created, you know, it was inevitable, right? I mean, there's been a shift in the world, and now there's an opportunity for Indigenous people from all over the globe, right? For, you know, African Americans, right? The same thing, the Indigenous people. People in Mexico are not Mexicans, right? You know, they're not Spanish, right? The people in Dominican Republic are not Spanish speaking people. You know, they became that, right, because of colonialism and the dominance of around the world. And so as the opportunities are there and present themselves, what we have had to learn to do is to, if the door opened, you know, just this much, we would have to take and stand in the middle of that with our body, right? To not allow that door to close. And what all of this is that we're speaking about right now is simply that same thing. Doesn't matter who you are. If you're a part of this, it's about keeping that door open big, long enough, right? So that we are provided an opportunity to shine, right? Not just us, right? But Tobias and everybody else, right? And so when those opportunities become available, and those like-minded people who are on here, like Scott Bernstein, right, begins to believe in you, believe in your vision, right? Like our mission statement is right? It's the vision, right? It's most people call that a dream. You know, for me, I'm actually living it. I'm living my culture, right? I'm actually living my life. I don't come home, throw my keys on the counter, go get a beer out of the refrigerator, walk past the kids, sit down on the couch and turn on the TV, right? I mean, that's how removed, you know, society has made people. So when I think that the opportunities here for Indigenous people to work with, you know, nature organizations is just you know, that's a right-handed glove for a right hand, right? That's that works so well, right? It does things for those organizations as well, right? It puts them on it keeps them on the front line with the people who should be there, and that is the Indigenous people in my mind, right?
Thank you, Chief Mann. Scott, I think you have a question.
I do, and while it's relevant to both, I'm going to direct it to Tobias, who I've known now for all of 30 minutes. But Tobias, great rap, great story. I related to it. My own startup was much like yours, and it was in urban food systems in Chicago. But for today, we're here to try and improve our collective and individual success rate in convincing people to take a chance on us, much like you were able to get people and Chief Mann was, and so forth. So I'd like you to just pretend for a second that I'm, let's say, the Secretary of Agriculture of the United States government. And because of that little vote this morning and the ones that preceded it, I'm going to have more money than I know what to do with, but I need to justify it, right? And I'm only going to be in office for 4 to 8 years. And I want to be able to tell a great story at the midpoint on this. So if you're successful reaching your aspirations. What's the headline 5 years from now? What is the outcome? I think there's a very thin line between the dream that we just heard about and the request from somebody bad like me to come up with a performance measure. But tell me yours. I mean, if you really could succeed, if things would take off, if you get the resources you needed, how would we describe the outcome together? Pretend we're going to be in a press conference together, inspiring the country, right? What's the message?
I tell anyone today, if so investing in me today is investing in North Science and Sustainability, Inc., a 501c3 nonprofit, grassroots nonprofit organization based in Newark, but is also investing in the Newark Community Food System, which I'm the founder and lead facilitator of, which consists of about between 20 to 30 local growers that expand throughout the city of Newark. And so you're investing in a full network of local growers. You are jumpstarting the visualization of and materialization of a local green economy. So people need to see what that means. And I interact with hundreds of college interns throughout the year. They are majoring in sustainability, different types of sciences, but they have no idea how that relates in the real world. And they come to me for answers. And so by investing in the work that I do, you kind of create pathways to these green jobs and you jumpstart a green economy.
Thank you. Checks in the mail, by the way.
Who else has a question out there? We have 5 minutes before we actually break out into workshops where you all will be sort of thinking about the same things that the Chief Mann and Tobias have been thinking about. Do we have one more question for people, for Tobias and Chief Mann? You can just unmute yourself and jump in. No need for a hand. Okay.
I just want to give a really quick shout out to someone who I'm just become really familiar with on this platform, Anthony from the North Water Coalition. First time ever having I did I don't know, was it a presentation or something we did together? And the first time I ever heard him speak, very articulate, and he participated in our annual community meal this year. And the presentation setup they had with giving out water, and I didn't even know they were like now they packaging, I believe, correct me if I'm wrong, but it looks like they even have a packaged bottle water line, if you want to call it that. And just really impressed with what is coming out of this whole new generation of ecopreneurs. And so I just want to, I see him, his face, his name, and I just want to make that acknowledgement. I don't get to interact with him often.
Anthony, we have 3 minutes. You want to jump in?
Oh, just thank you. Thank you for that. I appreciate that.
All right. Awesome. Well, why don't we go to the next session? We have a lot to cover, and I know that you all want to get into your brainstorming about your projects, which is the most important reason that we're here. So I'll again just explain the format for the session. I should say, first of all, let's all thank Tobias and Chief Mann. I'm sorry. Thank you both so much for these examples that we're now going to build on and keep in our heads and use during the breakout sessions as examples, successful examples, and hopefully at some point the other projects will get to the same level. So as I mentioned in some emails, the next session is your session, the breakout sessions. The format, I'll explain it again. We've divided all of you up. All of you have been divided into 2 breakout sessions, which will occur simultaneously. There'll be one on Northern New Jersey and one on Southern New Jersey. And each session will be a brainstorming workshop where you, in your session, discuss your needs, your community needs, and your community ideas, and begin to take the first steps towards transforming those into fundable projects. To help with that brainstorming, each breakout workshop has been assigned, first of all, a faculty collaborator. They are there to listen and to help in any way they can. Okay, they're not there to run the show at all. And we have two faculty who have been with us before and are really amazing at doing just that. Professor Lucia Rodriguez Ferrer is a faculty member in the Department of Civil and Environmental Engineering at the New Jersey Institute of Technology, where she studies bioremediation strategies for cleaning up pollution. Professor Ferrer has also been working with Chief Mann, and I believe might be working with Anthony as well, or is in the process of perhaps working with Anthony as well. So she'll be one of our faculty members. And then we're also really excited and lucky to have Professor Kevin Lyons. Professor Lyons is a faculty member in the Rutgers Business School, where he researches the environmental, social, and economic ethics of environmental and sustainable policy and development initiatives. He's also an expert on supply chains, and he's participated with us in our other two Green New Deal events and is very familiar to all of you, and we're just thrilled and thankful that he's back as well. Now, also very important is that both of these sessions will have been assigned what we're calling a guide. This is a point person who has prior experience developing ideas, helping communities develop ideas for funding from local, state, and federal agencies. And I just want to introduce to you those two guides today and give you a little bit of background before you join them in your breakout sessions. The guides will be running the breakouts. So we are extremely fortunate to have Tamira Jones Mikado. I hope I'm pronouncing that correctly. Tamira, is that right?
It's very close.
That's good enough. I'll take it.
Good enough.
I'll take it.
Mhm.
It's wonderful to meet you. Tamira is the Director of Operations of Climate Innovation, which supports grassroots communities in their efforts to develop solutions to local needs and problems. She has 20 years of experience in the environmental nonprofit sector and has designed and implemented projects for frontline activists and communities facing environmental injustice. Tamira has spent the last 3 years developing training programs and collaborative learning tools for local communities, which is perfect for what we're doing today. And as she has written, she, quote, loves putting wings on visionary ideas to see them take flight. So thank you so much for joining us today, Tamira.
My pleasure.
Our second guide is Scott Bernstein. You've heard from him already. Scott is the founder and former director of the Center for Neighborhood Technology, a nonprofit dedicated to improving economic and environmental sustainability in cities. Scott has taught at UCLA, was appointed to President Clinton's Council for Sustainable Development, where he co-chaired its task force on climate strategy solutions, and he also helped to create Chicago's Climate Action Plan. Scott has also worked on policy development regarding green infrastructure, affordable housing, and energy efficiency. So thank you, Scott, for joining us. He's worked a long time with the Price Institute, so we're happy to have you leading this for us for today. So now to your breakout sessions. If you look down at the bottom of your screen, I think you should be able to see a breakout session button pretty soon. For the Northern New Jersey breakout, we have Anthony Diaz, Elliot Ruga, Lori Howard, and Yvette Jordan. You are going to go to the Northern session. The Southern session has John Pulowski, Pat Kennedy, Verl Harrington, and Jamie Harrison from Waretown, and Fran Baranowitz, Beth Torriciello, and Angel Equaras from Ventnor City. And Jody Stewart's going to be joining you there as well. Just a reminder, both sessions are going to be running simultaneously. Each of you will have a guide. In the middle of the session, the guides are going to be switched. So you will be able to get feedback from both of these knowledgeable people, okay? So the idea is that it'll be a great discussion. Use these people, use each other for what you can get out of it so that we can begin this process of developing these great projects. So let's see the breakout. I don't see a breakout button, but maybe you all do. Do you see your breakout buttons? There it is. They just started. If you go and click on the breakout button, you'll see two options. You go to your breakout, there you all go. And I'll see you in a little while.